So, you want to play some more D&D?
Actually, I'd prefer if we played Gurps.
What the fuck is Gurps?
What the fuck is Gurps? Okay. So last time we talked about character building.
Right.
And why you liked building things in D&D.
Right.
The system, how it holds you to something, and how it's easier to build a character with certain rules set in place. And I play the exact opposite game, which is GURPS.
Right.
Generic universal role-playing system, where there are basically no rules.
Right.
You get 6 dice.
Which you have gotten me hooked on GURPS. But man, do I tear holes in optimization.
Oh, I mean, because there's no such thing as non-optimized characters, really, unless you just put no time into your character.
Right.
So, for people that don't know, essentially, GURPS is D&D with 6-sided die and whatever rules you want.
Yep.
And it's less of a system of a gameplay and more of a system on building your own game. Mm-hmm. And the way it works is, instead of a character sheet with these are the abilities you have and the skills and these are your stat points, what you do is you pick advantages and disadvantages. And those advantages could be skills, they could be knowledge, they could be items, they could be whatever you want, and then your disadvantages are quirks and different things like that, and they balance each other out. So for every 3 advantages, you take a disadvantage. And that's how you point by your system and point by your character. And in that sense, you can basically create a more realistic character.
Yeah.
And I like that, a more customized character.
Because that's one thing about D&D. There's no reason to have any flaws with your character. Mm-hmm. There's no reason not to be this perfect, pristine insert thing here.
At level 1.
Yeah, at level 1. But in GURPS, there's a reason to start having things like alcoholism. There's a big flaw with your character, but you're getting additional points to spend on the good side.
Right.
Or a phobia that can cripple your character in certain situations, but you get extra points so they're even better than they normally would be in combat.
Right.
Or they have more knowledge or more friends or more connections that they can use.
Exactly. And that's why I really like this system, because you build a more realistic character. Because no one is perfect.
Oh, absolutely not.
And also it lets you customize in ways that D&D doesn't. Last time we talked about how you have to fit into a class. So we referenced my Daredevil character. You got to have 2 billy clubs and a quarterstaff, and it just doesn't really work in the confines of anything other than like a monk or a 2-weapon fighter. Whereas with GURPS, there are no classes.
Right.
So if you want to build a guy who's really good with tonfas and then a quarterstaff, you can do that.
Yep.
That's completely reasonable. And then if you want to make him be able to teleport and fly, you make him. You make him an insomniac who can only see at night. You know, I mean, like there are different things like that really balance it out, and so no one's overpowered. And usually the game master will put a stipulation: these are how many disadvantages you can take. These are how many advantages you can take. You cap the system of points, and there are different game systems in GURPS too, just like in D&D. They have expansions and whatnot. GURPS is the generic universal role-playing game,
Right.
So you can put anything into GURPS.
Yeah.
Even if you like D&D, like you like the setting or the characters, you can move that over to GURPS.
Yes, you can.
Because it uses feet, it doesn't use squares. Yeah. It boils everything down to 6 dice, and it's generic, so you can mix together fantasy and sci-fi and horror and supernatural, and you can do really whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
And that's why I like it. And like you said, it's no way optimized because you can break it so easily.
Yeah.
I referenced my high school teacher. Shout out to Mr. K. He's the one who showed me the game. And he talks about in GURPS Super as a telepathic monk who, if he uses a hand sign and a movement, could blast somebody around the world because of how it broke the math.
Right.
And that's completely doable. I've recreated that exact break. And this is the 4th edition of GURPS.
Yeah.
You can't optimize with that. So many of those combinations. So how did that fit into you customizing a character?
Now I've done it a couple times, so I've seen that it comes roughly down to the same general setup. I pick a base style of character I want to play. Do I want to play the smart guy or the punching bag or the magician, whatever, and then I take that, I then come up with I look through the skills and the advantages and the disadvantages over and over and over again, and then I see something that I think would be interesting because I always talk to you a million miles an hour about what role or what world we're playing in and where and when and who we're going to be with. And one thing that I usually do when I'm building a character is figure out what the party already has.
And try to fill.
And then fill, because not only does that create a guaranteed niche for the character, but it also allows me to target something to build. And when I have that target, then I look at things like, okay, I'm going to be the punching bag, so I should get things like rejuvenation or faster healing, or I need really high health, so I'm hard to knock out.
Right.
And I know the last character I played, he was not impossible to knock out, but he was pretty tough to beat down unless it was another superhero. Like, I think at one point he got hit in the head with a crowbar and it did no damage.
No, it just bounced off. And it actually hurt the person who attacked him with it. And that's the thing is with Gurps, and especially Gurps Supers, where like you're dealing with it's like Yu-Gi-Oh versus Magic the Gathering. Like Magic the Gathering, a person with 15 attack points is super high, whereas in Yu-Gi-Oh 5,000 is really high. Mm-hmm. And that's where Gurps Supers is compared to Gurps Normal, because Gurps Supers is you're dealing with superheroes. So I like as a normal like human, I would roll 2 dice for a normal attack.
Yeah.
Whereas your group superhero is like 6 dice each time.
Yeah. It was like 4 dice plus 2.
2 exactly. Plus modifiers. Plus if you turn that into a combo. Yeah. Plus if it hits anything like arterial. You know what I mean? Like so in that they have a system for that. Yeah. That's the thing is you can use all of the rules or none of the rules with Gurps, and you can't really do that with D&D. You can pick and choose here and there and mod a few things. Yeah. But Gurps really is if you want to homebrew something or make something your own, and you can really do that. And with that, it's a lot more work for the GM, for the players. I'd never recommend Gurps to somebody who's first playing a role-playing game.
I would agree with that.
No, it's never the choice. Unless your GM has played 1,000 games and can make it easy enough to understand.
You want to know the funniest thing?
What's that?
First game I ever played was Gurps.
It was Gurps, exactly. But you would DM some.
I DM'd and I've listened to thousands and thousands of hours of D&D.
Exactly. So you could understand the systems a little bit better. And also, I will give myself some kudos. I can boil it down to a system that's easy enough. Yeah. Because it is easy in the sense where you only have 1 dice. Yeah. You know, you have a 6-sided dice and you have several of them. So you have 6 die. And that's all you use. So you don't have to worry, which one's the 20, which one's the 10, which one's the 12. How many do I use? That's the only thing you have to worry about.
Right.
The thing that gets hard is how specific you can be.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. So in D&D, if you have somebody who uses a gun, they have an attack that uses the gun.
Right.
It's a basic attack. You roll whatever hit die, and if it hits, you know, they do a certain amount of damage depending on which one. In Gurps, it can be any. So if you're running, you roll this many die.
Yep.
If you're standing still and you take aim, it's this many die. And then you roll a certain amount of damage depending on where you hit them. Where did you aim at? Did you aim for their arteries? Did you aim for their eye? Did you aim for their head? All of this changes what you roll and what happens next. Mm-hmm. So it's really how much work the game master wants to put in and how interested your players are. And that's why I think D&D is still always going to be the starter game.
Yeah.
Whether you're an experienced player with board games or tabletops or RPGs in video game sense, D&D is still where you start.
Yeah.
I think Gurps is a stepping stone. And it's by no means the end-all be-all of all games.
Right.
It's completely broken. It's super hard to play if you don't like numbers.
It's also your favorite.
And it's also my completely favorite.
And it grew on me really fast just because of the people we play with.
Right.
Because you can get really deep into role-playing when you can put flaws and reasoning behind a character, and
exactly. You can just play nuances that you can't really play in D&D where the mechanics kind of hinder you a little bit.
You can definitely play them. There's just no reason to.
Exactly. There's no reason to have a nuanced character, as you were saying.
Why would I ever make a D&D character that only had 1 hand?
Yeah. There's no reason to.
to.
Mechanically, at least, yeah.
But in Gurps, there's definitely a reason to have 1 hand because you get an extra like 50 points to spend on your character.
Right.
But also you now have everything else playing off of the fact you only have 1 hand. You're building a character who grew up having 1 hand or has had 1 hand for enough of a time that their skills are exclusively about having 1 hand.
Right.
Instead of, I just don't have a hand.
And the thing is, there's so many specific moves. In Gurps, there is one-armed fighting is a thing that you can take.
Yep.
You know, and I love that. They've put so much time and effort into having something for everybody. And again, and this isn't picking on D&D, and this isn't saying, like I said, GURPS is not the end-all be-all system. It's got plenty of flaws.
We just played D&D like half an hour ago.
Exactly. It's just, it fits and it has multiple flavors.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're playing D&D, most likely you're playing generic fantasy.
Unless you want to reflavor
everything. Exactly. Or search really hard and find some of their space stuff.
Yeah.
Or if you want to try their LARPing system, you have to search really hard for those things. Or you play a different game.
Yeah.
And there are several other games that are based off the D&D D20 system, still with that license, but they're completely different games. Whereas in GURPS, everything's all in one. You got to buy a few different books, but you can pick and choose. You don't need every book for everything. Even to play, like, so GURPS Supers, you don't actually need the Supers book.
No.
You just got to be willing to do some math.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we ended up doing.
That isn't what we did. Because I remember you're like, wait, hold on. So where's this power? I'm like, well, that's in the powers book. I don't have the powers. Well, shoot. Okay.
And the weirdest thing to me about building a character in GURPS was how much it was just, okay, well, what do you think this would do?
Yes.
And it was just because balancing the optimizer in me that's like, okay, well, I really want to figure out mathematically so the DM doesn't have any escape route to, okay, I have this feature and this ability which can combine and let me do this thing. It's like the telekinetic push.
Yes.
It's like mathematically
you want that.
That is guaranteed to happen because of what these abilities do.
Right.
But things like creating a spear out of your own flesh and lobbing it like a half a mile at a moving van,
right,
is just like, I mean, yeah, you can try and do that. Sure.
And that's the thing is, like, part of it is on the fly. You have to be really good at improv. You have to be able to come up with rules on the spot.
Right.
And you also have to have a reference system. So what you're saying isn't out of the blue for the players. You have to, like I said, you have to be willing to put in the work if you're going to GM GURPS.
And you kind of have to have players who are also willing to put in the work.
Exactly. And also be able to improv on the fly, because so they're not mad at you when I say this time it took 3d6. Yeah. Next time you're like, well, it's only 1d6. Well, it's a different situation, different ability. Those rules are not as specific in GURPS.
Because I remember doing that spear thing took like 2/3 of my health.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, okay. But then it was like, okay, but it's the first time I've ever done something this big, and I'm doing it in like a half a second, so I can throw it at this van.
And we were able to do that without having to homebrew a lot either, though.
Right.
I was able to look it up, see what kind of math it involved, like change a few systems, and figure out what it would take for your molecular structure to shift.
Yeah.
So you could send a bone bullet out of your arm. You know,
without exploding the arm.
Whereas in D&D today, we had to sit down for almost an hour and a half to figure out how the hell a monk could use 2 billy clubs effectively.
Yeah.
That's what we did all day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, there are advantages and disadvantages. Let us know in the comments below if you like GURPS, if you're willing to check out GURPS. I'll put some links to Steve Jackson's games on there.
Or your favorite RPG system.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Shout outs to the TMNT system. Shout out to Star Wars. Marvel's games. There are so many different ones. Put what your favorite one is below. Next time, we are going to talk about homebrew games.
Right.
So, making your own games, what's that like? Do you use a system? I let you take a guess. I use GURPS to build systems usually.
What?
What exactly? But let us know in the comments below what you do. Check us out at cavetrollscast at gmail.com. At cavetrollscast for
on Facebook, on Twitter.
Exactly. Instagram, all of that schniznit. I am at Resident Stevel on Twitter.
I am at Mr. Opra on Twitter.
And we're the Cave Trolls, and we're out.